Hearing it.
Good.
Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. I'm Velin Hawkins, your host, and I am excited to bring to you today Judy Hahn. Judy and I have been friends for a while, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. But today, she and I are going to get into the conversation about the myths and truths about added sugar and other processed foods, why they are not good for us, and why you can not only open your thinking, expand your thinking to ask the question, why? We're going to explore that, but we're not going to leave you in the why. We're actually going to give you some solutions, because this is one of the added sugars and processed foods are one of the biggest reasons that people gain weight, can't lose weight, and support chronic illness in the body, and a lot more. And we'll get into all of that. But right now, my friend Judy Hahn is CEO of Hahn Holistic Health. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach, a functional medicine practitioner, functional medicine health practitioner, and she educates about wellness through functional medicine. Judy is a stress management expert, a speaker, and personal health concierge whose mission and focus is to find the root cause of any disease and address it naturally so that we can live vibrant, healthy lives once again, and everyone. This is not just for women, it's not just for men, it's not just for people who are overweight or looking for that health solution. These are strategies that are for everyone. And as a health strategist and educator, Judy partners with clients to inspire, influence, and guide, taking baby steps towards understanding information about food-related illnesses and the connection to their personal relationship with food. And don't you know that I want to say a lot of us have that personal relationship with food that disconnects us from the healthy self. And what Judy does is help people to reconnect and reclaim their perfect health. Judy, I said all of that, and I did not show my other screen here.
That's okay.
You and this gorgeous image of you.
Thank
But
you.
let's start out by actually exploring, how did you get on this journey to doing these amazing things that you're doing? National board certified functional medicine health practitioner, a personal health concierge, speaker, trainer, educator in this space of food relationship and how to shift that to be in the best space that you can be in.
Well, to start out with, the educator, I guess, would be the best place, because I've been that educator in just about everything I've done all my life. When I was a kid, I did some education, some teaching in art. As I was in corporate America, I became a what I called a stand-up computer trainer. And I did that for many years. It's always been, I am someone who really enjoys researching and finding out, those kids that always say, why? I was one of those. And so I'm still that way as an adult. I think most people who are, and I call myself a functional wellness coach or a functional wellness guide, because I am a non-medical person in this field. I have been studying functional medicine at a school for 5 years and functional wellness at another school for the last 2 years. So it's really interesting perspectives. The national board certification came about because I felt that I didn't know what I wanted to do with this part of my life and the health education. And what we're moving to, which is really interesting in the world of medicine, is that doctors can actually have people like myself working in their offices to begin. I mean, it's usually a revolving door, right? They have 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. But because I've been trained in this same way that the functional medicine doctors have been, I can actually work in a doctor's office, and there are actually CPT codes now, I believe, that doctors can use to help cover the kind of work I do. However, that said, I don't know if there are a lot of us who are out there working in doctors' offices, because this has been a very slow process, the certification to get it accepted in the world. And so what I've been doing for, let's see, I started my business in 2015. I'm a solopreneur who works mostly one-on-one. I've got some new group programs and some new other things that I'm offering on a larger scale, because my goal is really to reach as many people as possible. And one-on-one is great, but there's just not enough hours in the day to be able to make the impact that I'd really like to make. Now, it's interesting because most people I know who are in the field of functional medicine, as I am, came to it because they personally had some health issue that they ended up doing research and discovering the answer. And then they were so fascinated by it, because it is fascinating, that that's the path they took to help other people. I've never been like the same path that anybody else took. So I didn't have that kind of a medical issue that I researched, but I did personally have an experience where I was told that the only resolution to the problem I had, which was 4 discs in my cervical spine, were narrowing around my spinal cord, and the bones were deteriorating. I was basically told that I would have to have fusion of those 4 discs, which meant at 66 years old at the time, I would be moving kind of like this for the rest of my life. And I said, oh, this is unacceptable. And so I actually found a solution, who happened to be in Germany, of all places, and ended up going to Germany and having 4 discs replaced in my neck, like you would have your hip replaced or your knee replaced. This surgeon had been doing artificial disc replacement for more than 20 years. And as you can see, at 70, I have pretty darn good mobility and do just, I had to take a couple things off the bucket list. I signed a waiver that said I would not go skydiving, which was something I kind of wanted to do. And the other one, I was like, I could care less. Bungee jumping was not on my list. But other than that, I'm pretty good, although I keep eyeing the trampoline in the yard next door and think, the doctor probably wouldn't want me to do that either. So, so it's that curiosity that I have, especially when somebody tells me this is your only solution. And so I think that helping people advocate for themselves in regards to anything health related was really a beginning motivation for me. So, you hear today about people who go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh, well, all your labs are fine. It must be in your head. And so I'm the it's not all in your head health expert, because I will help you figure it out. If there's something wrong with you and you feel it, we will pay attention, because you're the one who knows your body.
I love that. And you're so right. And that is how so many of us get discouraged about seeking health solutions,
Mm.
because we're trusting the doctor who says, all of your labs came back, you're looking good. There's no real explanation for this happening from a physical standpoint, so it's mental. And then you're thinking, so if I'm creating it and I'm feeling it in my body, is it not really here? And you want to put it aside, but then you keep coming back to there's something wrong. And I love the fact that, you even got into all of this because of this level of curiosity that you had. And I think that we have to learn to be curious about why things started in us, because we also have to know that, disease in us or any ailments didn't probably just start overnight, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely. One of the things right now, I've been doing a huge, huge amount of research on sugar. You're talking to like one of the major recovering sugar addicts around. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, "Oh, I want to give up sugar today." And I realized by doing all this research how devastating refined sugar and refined carbs are to the body. The level of addiction is such that people do not want to give it up. It's the same level of addiction as one would have to morphine or cocaine. Actually, they say that it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. And they've done tests with mice to prove that, which is
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. But I I think that it's time that people start to understand that people like myself are not here to deprive you of anything. We are here to educate. So if I tell you, for instance, okay, so I said I'm 70. I can look back and see now that, how many years ago I wish that I had known what hindsight 2020 and all that. If you have been diagnosed with diabetes, even pre-diabetes, your body has already been creating that for over 13 years. And so knowing that and knowing what I know now, I really want to be able to help people from that education be able to break the habits that they have and live a healthier life, because we can all live long with enough medications that are given to us by the doctor. Does that mean we can still have quality of life? Not necessarily, right?
Right.
I met a lady yesterday who said to me, "Okay, I need to talk to you." No, I've known this lady for a couple of years, but it she just had a grandbaby. Her daughter just had a baby. And I think that was the trigger. I think she realized I can't, when this kid's a year old, I'm not going to be able to get down on the ground and play. When the kid's 5, I'm not going to be able to run around and play. Her HbA1c, so her 3-year glucose levels are super high. She has high blood pressure and a few other things going on. But thank goodness she said, "You know what? Now I'm ready to talk." And I hope it doesn't wait, it doesn't take everybody to have a grandchild to realize that. Because if you're 30, if you're 40, now is the time to understand this. Move yourself forward so that your second or third age, whatever we call it these days, is quality time, being able to do what you want, live life to its fullest. And think about this piece. It's then generational, because if you're younger and you have kids, you get to share that with them so that they grow up healthy. And then their kids grow up healthy. So I look at what I do as it's really a huge thing, right? It's not just those one-on-one things. It's that trickle down effect for the rest of the family.
It really is. And, it's unfortunate that many have to have a health crisis to say, I'm ready to make change, or a life event, a grandchild, or, the loss of someone,
Oh, yep.
in order to say, I'm ready now. And I love how you shifted that to thinking prevention. And we haven't even talked about the fact that the medical community really wanted us to believe that you can't change your genes. And what
Mm.
we've learned is that you can, and your genes are an expression of several things that are going on inside of your body. But if you're living the way that past generations have lived, then yes, you're going to experience some of the same things. To change that means that you change the internal ecosystem that changes the gene expression. And we have to learn these things just like we have to learn how to personally advocate for our own health and well-being. And sometimes it's up to us to tell the doctor who says, I'm going to write you a prescription for this, that, or the other. And you say, well, hold on to that for a minute. Do you know of any alternatives that I can, alternative methods, natural things that I could do before I go in that direction? And if the doctor says no, then, thank you. I think I'm going to explore that. And that means that you've taken your life back into your own hands and finding the solution. We're always looking for the cure, thinking that that's the solution. But let's talk about the real solution. What does it take to examine something to uncover the root cause?
Well, everything you said just now, just to reiterate too, even cancer, they say, is only 5% genetic. And so if we look at that, this whole new science of epigenetics is in fact that science of turning on and off your genes. I can show you studies of identical twins. So those are the people whose DNA will be the same. And based on their lifestyle, their diet, their stress levels, they will look like two completely different people. Skin, the weight is, I mean, we have pictures of those kind of things, so it's amazing. How do you uncover? I have a kind of a simple formula. It's not, I don't want people to understand that this functional wellness is a super easy process, because it's not. I call myself the puzzle piecing symptom detective, right? Because first of all, we need to understand that every body is different than every other body. So everybody is unique. You can have 10 people in the room, they all have diabetes. The Western medicine doctor will give them the same solution, the same quote unquote, what we call protocol. But how did they get there? Maybe 10 completely different ways. And so the protocol may or may not work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't deal with protocols to begin with, because that would assume that everybody can do the same thing. My little formula that I've created over time is that awareness plus action plus accountability equals the transformation you desire. So awareness, we have a tendency, there's all sorts of things. We have a tendency to create a new normal from something that's happening in our body. So let's say, I don't know, you go out for lunch and you have maybe a little gas and bloating, and you go to the bathroom and come back and you think, you know, my pants fit me a little tighter, like right now when I tried to zip them and close them. Boy, I don't know what that is, but that becomes the new normal. Okay, after I eat, that's what happens. Well, instead of accepting that as this new normal, what if we say, why is that happening? And when we start to question, we realize that normal is not gas and bloating or your pants being too tight after, okay, if you ate after Thanksgiving, we're talking a whole different thing, right? But really, a normal meal after you're done, you should not have that kind of response from your body. And what happens is the body gets, I mean, we get so used to it that that becomes everything. It becomes everything that we're used to with any meal that we have, right? And so that awareness, for instance, just an example, I'm sorry for all the dinging. I normally don't have dinging at all. The person who goes to the doctor and says, I have indigestion or I have reflux, and the doctor says, oh, well, that's not a problem. You have too much stomach acid. Just go to, it's over the counter now. You can buy whatever they're called, Prilosec or I don't even know all the names. And that will lower your stomach acid and then you'll be better. What the doctor isn't understanding is, first of all, no one has too much stomach acid. Most people might not have enough, but you need stomach acid to denature the protein that you eat every day. So instead of saying, oh, I have this thing, let me take that, if we say, why do I have that? Then we start to look at, am I having a food sensitivity? Am I, eating something, not that you're allergic to, because allergic is an EpiPen, but that you're sensitive to? Am I eating on the run? Because when you're stressed, the stomach acid goes down. Stress creates fight or flight, and we respond exactly like cavemen. In other words, what's not necessary to save my life? Digestion, reproduction, cut them off. And once I'm okay again, then they start up. So it's about, well, why is this happening? And how can I change what that is? And usually it's because people don't know how to deal with it. So they create it as their new normal and go on with it. People are so busy, right? I don't have time for that right now. And so the problem of reflux is too much stomach acid in the wrong place is what the problem is, because it goes up into your throat and those cells are not used to hydrochloric acid. The stomach has protection by the mucus lining that we normally have. So I think that awareness is really that first piece. It's giving yourself permission to say, is that really a normal thing? And how can I find out what this means? And then the second piece is, once you find out what it means, is taking action on it. That means when we look at what you're eating, and there's lots of ways, and I'm using this as an example, right? There's a lot of ways to figure out why you're having the gas and bloating or why you're having the indigestion. So you could do what's called an elimination diet. That's one thing, but it's not an easy thing to do, especially on your own. And then the other thing is you could have someone do what's called a food sensitivity test. And I recommend that you don't go to somebody who will then give you a test that costs like $1,200 and you get 20 pages of stuff that tells you you're sensitive to all these things. And then these people go, oh my God, now what do I do? Right? The bottom line is we want to be able to identify what it is that's causing an inflammation or a distress in the body. And we do that very methodically. And then we eliminate those things for a certain amount of time. And after that amount of time, we can bring them back in and test them again and find out if we're still bothered by them. So awareness and then action and accountability, I think is really important, because when I start with people, I think they have an impression that I'm their accountability person. Now, I'm their guide, I'm their support, I'm their mentor, I'm their cheerleader. What do you need? That's what I am, right? To get you through and over to the other side. But you are the person who's doing all the work. It's your body. And so I need the person to be committed to themselves. That accountability, yeah, it's okay. I'm thrilled that people want to be accountable to me, and that's okay. But I want them to be proud of themselves, right? I want them, because I want to give them the tools that they need so that when I wean them off of me, at least on a regular basis, a lot of people do a maintenance kind of thing, but when I wean them off of me and something weird happens, they don't have to panic and they don't have to ignore it. They can say, wait a minute, I have some tools. Let me figure out why I have this. Maybe they do need to come back and chat or ask a question, but now I have left them to be able to live their lives healthier, and again, share with their families those same kinds of things, so that people are independent of me and can function and be happy and healthy.
Well, that is really key. And it's a great training space too, to learn how to advocate for ourselves. I remember for the first time I heard the term medical gaslighting, I was really taken aback, because it was like, okay, that's the experience that so many people have in the annual doctor's visit, and a lot of times too, we show up and we know that there's some persistent thing that has been happening for us. But because it's been persistent, and you mentioned it too, we kind of put it in the back of our minds. And we get to the doctor's office and we don't really even remember that that's an issue. And so we don't bring it up, we don't get it addressed. And then a week after our doctor's appointment, it's back, and we're back in that same line of action, which is ignoring it. And so, is there a way that you kind of help your clients to record things like that they may experience? Make a list of questions that they may want to even ask you as they're working through this process of self-awareness. What are some of the things that you bring to them that brings those things out of them, whether it's during one visit or over time? Now you're going to start, bring it to me the next time we meet. I mean, and how do you do that, and how has it worked?
Well, I'm very fortunate, because the program that I use for my business, first of all, it's HIPAA compliant. I don't have to be HIPAA compliant, but I opt to be as much as I can. But inside that program, there's a chat system. And so one of the things that I really like to do is to make sure that people communicate with me, right? If you have a question, if something doesn't feel right, if you're sometimes we use supplements, not a lot, but if you're taking something or you tried something and you don't feel quite right, things just aren't quite the way you think they should be, that's a get on that chat, and I get the little thing that says there's a number on it, and that means that there's a message, and I get in there and I respond. But one of the things that I also do with my clients, and this doesn't have to be done with every male for as long as we work together, but one of the things is a food mood journal. And the reason we call it a food mood journal, I don't want somebody to just record what they've eaten. I want to know, did you eat that because you were hungry? Did you eat that because you were frustrated or unhappy? So that we can start, you see, what I do is body, mind, and spirit, because where the mind goes, the body's gonna go. And so we have to get it all lined up. We have to figure out, what are your triggers? What are the things that you can do differently? And people have these wonderful aha moments, and they may be with me or they may be a year afterwards, which I just recently got an aha from a lady I worked with. We did a part of her thing was removing dairy from her diet. And she was like, well, I'm never going to remove dairy completely from my diet. And I was like, okay, I am not the white coat that says do this. I am the person who says, here are some things we can be curious about. Here are some things, let's try. What's a week of doing this or 2 weeks of doing this? And then going back and seeing what our body says, right? It's about, like you said, it's about that curiosity. It's about willingness to have an open mind and not automatically shut off because those are your go-to things. So that the food mood journal helps with that. It also identifies when you've eaten something and you might have bloating. And we want to know, did that happen immediately after you ate, or was it an hour after you ate? Right? All of that information gives us what we can use to then try to troubleshoot the body. And I say troubleshoot, I was a IT person for 35 years. I stopped tech puzzles to go with health puzzles, right? This is a much more purposeful, and I feel much better about this kind of troubleshooting, because people really do find out things for themselves. I mean, this lady who said to me the other day, oh my God, you know what? I can't eat dairy. And I was like, really? Why would you say that? And she said, oh, and she told me her story. Well, we had done that a year ago, but she didn't want to give up dairy, which was fine. I'm not here to say do or don't. I'm just here to say, if we can't try that and see if there's a problem, then we can't eliminate it and say, oh, it's not a problem, then go ahead, right? So I think that that kind of a journal is something that really helps with that awareness piece.
I love that. I really love that. Because yes, when most people think of a food journal, it's what did I eat? And then what did I feel? And if anything happened an hour later or a couple of hours later, they're not thinking about it in relation to recording that information. And one of the things that I love that you talked about too was just this whole idea of experimenting with yourself. You know, I did that one time early on, and I think my first experiment was I went 1 week without eating something, because I didn't eat red meat. I didn't eat um, um, pork except for bacon, which, you know, I think about it now and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm on a journey of repairing my relationship with the beautiful animals that I did harm to without even knowing it. And, that was eye-opening for me. And it started when I started this experimenting, because it was about taking the meat off my plate and then looking at how did I feel. The experiment was a how do I feel versus what did I do. And I felt so much better. And then I made the connection of, if animals are suffering in the process of going to slaughter to become something to put on my plate, am I consuming that too? And then it was like, well, it would make sense that, yeah, you got some of that energy in this food. And when you're eliminating it, even for a short period of time, is that what the experiment is going to show you? And it did for me. I
Mm-hmm.
know that it has for a lot of others, but whether it's sugar or meat or the processed foods that we eat that contribute to these states of being, experimenting like that might be a great first approach to getting your mind in sync with whether or not we need something to, these foods to eat versus they're being unnecessary, and even more than that, contributors to illness. And something that you mentioned that I want to kind of go back to, because I think it encompasses it all, is the mind piece. Mindset, in just being open-minded about this information coming in, and then you determine whether it's for you or it's not. A lot of times you and I and others are really more focused on planting seeds with the information that we're sharing. And then there's the mindset that really is, but I don't want to give this up.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a place of pain and suffering for people who really, you talked about being a sugar addict. What are some of the things that people can recognize as they're experiencing this to be part of this awareness that you talked about?
Well, I think that, excuse me, sugar addiction it's really sneaky. And I say that because our culture has created a culture of sugar as a reward for, oh, we're having a celebration. Oh, you're gonna let's go have ice cream to celebrate. Oh, you're not feeling, oh, you had a miserable day. Oh, well, let's have some, you know what? I've got some cake. Let's have some cake. You'll feel better. So we've been kind of programmed into this. Our emotions are already tied culturally to sugar. And then you look at it and you say, oh, and on top of it, what's actually happening is that there are what are called reward centers in the brain. And those reward centers are tied to happy hormones, dopamine. That one is probably the one most people know. And so, of course, you want those comfort foods. You want that reward feeling that, I got to tell you a story. Okay, it just dawned on me. I'm going to make a really long story short. I was with my mother-in-law at a nursing home. She had dementia, and I was having trouble leaving her because she said she was going with me, and she couldn't. I mean, she had to stay there. And I'm trying to reason with her, but that was the wrong thing to do. Well, let's say I got out of there, which I did with the help of a nurse, and I was in my car, I couldn't get a hold of anybody I knew by phone because I was very upset by this whole, it was very emotional. But on the way home, I passed a Walgreens, and I was at a light, and I thought, oh, after the light, I'm pulling into Walgreens. And I went up and down the aisle, and I found double stuffed Oreo cookies. This will make me feel better, right? So I bought them, and I got in my car and I ate one, and I went, now, the rest of the way home, I finished probably most of the bag. And when I got home, I finished the rest of the bag. But what the interesting piece to this is my sister, who can eat one piece of candy, who said to me, I don't understand. Can you explain to me, if you ate one cookie and you had that much relief, why did you continue eating them? And I was like, well, that's easy. If one did that much, imagine how much the bag would do. You know, and I tell that tongue in cheek, but it was a real story. And I think it's what happens to us because we get that dopamine hit, we feel better. Oh, if I eat more, I'll even feel better. Well, here's something most people don't know. Alzheimer's is considered type 3 diabetes. It has been for maybe the last 10 years been called type 3 diabetes. But there's even more damage that sugar does, not just in the brain. Because I'm starting on a like crazy thing. Western medicine sees all the parts of the body as separate. I mean, think about it. We have a doctor for your gastrointestinal, and a doctor for cardiac, and a doctor for your big toe, and a doctor for this and that and the other. When in fact, everything is connected. And so if I'm eating that sugar, and let's say the doctor's talking to me about my glucose levels, he's not even telling me what's going on in here while it's destroying things for me and maybe leading me on a path that will lead me faster to Alzheimer's. So I want to back up on that and just say that I believe that we need to find alternatives to things, yeah, and not be so, I'm not going to give up sugar. I like sugar. I want sugar. Well, of course you do. If you were a drug addict, you'd want your drugs. So I'm sorry, I go off a little bit on that.
So that leads me to a really great next question, and that is, you know, this whole idea of living a healthy life, especially if you're on a journey. You know, you've had a health crisis and you're on a journey to wellness, or you've recognized that sugar is doing some, you know, creating some really adverse effects within you, and it really is to your best interest to leave sugar alone. But now you're dealing with depression because you feel like you've lost sugar in your life, and you know you've got to go through the stages, or you know, figure out how to get to the end of it sooner than later. And realizing that this is a journey, how is it that you help people to keep going, to not quit, to don't give up on themselves, you know, to, and I don't want to say push through it, because when you push through things, you're making things happen that sometimes will push back to you. But just opening things up to continue that forward movement on the journey. What do you do? How do you encourage someone in that space?
I think that one of the things is to help people understand from a different perspective, perhaps. I'll give you an example because stories are usually the easiest way to understand something. A client who has been, I mean, really amazing at doing all the recommended things, trying everything, and really, and one of her big things was losing weight. And she really, I mean, it's rare that somebody doesn't have weight loss on their list of the top three that they, when they come to me. But what I shared with her, and this actually was in an email while she was in Dubai doing work. She's a high-powered executive. And I could hear in her email how discouraged she was. And I knew I couldn't talk to her. And so I asked if she would be willing to look at a different perspective. And that perspective was, instead of, oh my God, I'm not losing weight, I can't lose weight. What if you look at it as, what is my body protecting me from by putting all this fat around my organs? And once I get healthy and my body sees I'm healthy, it will just say, oh, I don't need that fat anymore, and start to release it. To look at it as a protective measure. Your body has one goal in life: to keep you alive. Even if it means that it creates conditions and illnesses, it will do whatever it takes to keep your body alive, to keep you alive. So she said to me, you know what? I would never have thought of that. But now I understand. It's not that I'm not able to do something. It's that my body, inside, there's really something going on, and my body understands that, and it's doing what it knows to do to protect me. And now I have to do all the things that will make me healthy so that my body can release that fat. It kind of took the onus of the work, right? I didn't lose weight. I can't lose weight. I'm no good at this. It wasn't at all. It was, what do I need to give my body so my body does what I want it to do?
I love that. I love that. That is some of the work. And it goes back to your awareness and just educating people on the fact that we do have internal mechanisms, belief systems, and maybe something happened in childhood that took your brain to the point of saying, if she puts on this extra weight, it protects her from this, and this. And the other thing that I know that happens a lot too is that when we're a child and that thing needed to happen, or us having that protective measure built into us, when we get to adulthood and we realize that that's not needed anymore, and we can thank our body for protecting us in that way and allow the release. And so I'm so glad you brought that in, because that's part of the mindset that we just have no clue about what's happening to us, inside of us, for us,
Right.
that creates some of this stuff. And illness can be some of the same things. We're ill so that we can garner someone's attention, or, one of the easiest ways to put this is, I didn't want to make a presentation at work one day. I had 2 days. I was not prepared. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I knew when it was coming. Don't you know, the day of, my body said, well, I'm just going to help you with that. I'm going to make you sick.
Sick.
And I was sick as a dog, could not go in, could not do the presentation. The meeting got postponed. But when it came back up again, I was prepared. That gave me the time, the downtime that I needed to really do the preparation. And my body didn't see another need to help me to not do that and stress over that. And, when you think about some of the things that we go through, I love, people might think this is a little on the woo-woo side, but I love Louise Hay's book. And there are a couple other books that are similar
Oh
in that
yeah.
they really define if you've got issues in your knees or, your eyesight or
Or your back, you're not getting
your back.
supported, or yeah. No,
Exactly.
I totally agree with you. But I have to back up just for a second, because you mentioned going off of sugar and then becoming depressed. And I need to address that, because I want people to know it's not necessarily going off sugar that's going to make you depressed. Depression and anxiety, those are side effects of people who are sugar addicts. Those are things that can be created in the body as a result of sugar. And so it's not just going off of it. I mean, it can be the good side and the bad side and still have the same thing. Even just depression and anxiety itself, we know today that if your microbiome, your gut microbiome, because we have many microbiomes in the body, if your gut microbiome is not healthy, that can be what causes depression and anxiety. Depression is very tightly linked to serotonin, which is another one of our happy hormones, neurotransmitter actually. And only 5% of serotonin is created in the brain. 95% of serotonin is created in your gut. So depression is treated by psychiatrists and doctors as if it's all here, when I can tell you from personal experience, having gotten off sugar and cleaned up my gut, to see a huge improvement in mood stability in myself. Okay,
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
here's the problem. The problem is, and I badmouth nobody, because everybody does the best they can do, what they were taught to do. Traditional medicine was funded by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, who were invested in pharmaceuticals, who then offered to donate tons of money to medical school if they used pharmaceuticals in their practices. So that's something most people don't know about traditional medicine. And then when I look at it, I look at the Western medicine, because a lot of times I say I'm a functional wellness coach, and people are like, they look like deer in headlights. You're like, what? Traditional medicine is the medicine of what? They look at your labs, they use them to diagnose, and then they use them to prescribe a medication to mask symptoms. Functional medicine, functional wellness, I call the medicine of why. Because when we look at the labs, we don't use them for diagnostics, they're just data. I mean, I was drinking 80 ounces of water, but when I looked at my lab work, I could see I was dehydrated. So I knew there was something going on in my body.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to know, why is this happening, and address it, right? So whether it's depression, and if you're in a bad way and you need something for depression, then by all means, go do it, because we want you to live and we want you to deal with things. If you have a real problem, then go do what you need to do, and then start working on it afterwards, right? Which obviously was what I did.
Wow. Yes. Great examples too. I love the fact that, we learn so much from hearing the stories because they are the picture that we can potentially relate to our own lives and experiences. And, although I know that we could continue this conversation for a couple more hours
Oh yeah.
to go, it really is time for us to bring things to a close. And I would love for you to please impart some wisdom to our audience that would be the seed planted or the catalyst for that action to be taken, for that opening of the mindset to really understand. And I'm going to bring it down a little closer to the things that I know that we know are the things that have prevented, reversed, and cured some of these illnesses that we talk about are whole food foods, plant-based foods, and minimal to no processed foods. And I mean, even when you talk about oil and salt, Himalayan sea salt is probably as close to, or one of the salts that is as close to a natural salt, but oils are all processed. Even your best olive oils, unless you're standing there and you're squeezing it yourself. Um, so when we're looking at some of these solutions and advocating for ourselves, we have to advocate first to ourselves, for
Mhm.
ourselves. But share some wisdom with our audience as we're wrapping up today.
Well, I think for me, it's that awareness piece. First of all, that if you notice something going on in your body, that whether you talk to anyone about it or not, jot it down. Start noticing for yourself. Start being aware and seeing. Because if you were to come to talk to me and you had some of that information, our work would be so much easier, right? You may not have the solutions for what you're finding, but the awareness is huge. Another thing I would say is learn to read labels. I think that, well, in one of my programs, the Hey Sugar, It's Over program, one of the things that I provide, and I'm happy to provide it for your audience if you want the handout, it's 61 names for sugar. And that's not even all of them. Okay. So when you start looking at the labels, then you can start looking to see if they're really hiding things, because that's what even high fructose corn syrup, if you'll notice, lately I've noticed on the labels, they don't say high fructose corn syrup, they say HFCS. And I thought, oh, how interesting, because now people are looking for high fructose corn syrup, not for HFCS, right?
Right.
I think another huge thing to share with people is when you go grocery shopping, try to stay only on the perimeters of the store, because that's where you're going to find the whole foods. That's where you're going to find, whether you're a vegan and you don't eat meat, or whether you're not and you're looking for meat, it's still, those things are all the produce is going to be around the sides. That as soon as you start to go in towards the center of the store, those are the things that have all those hidden, whatever, sugar, salt, everything, hidden everything in them. And they say, this is one of those little tidbits, they say that if all the products in a grocery store that had hidden, like processed, like sugar, salt, things like that in them were removed, we would have 20% of the things in the grocery store left. Now,
And
that I think that's huge. I mean,
it
that
is
is just
huge.
enormous. And you know what? If you have a question, uh, send me a message. I'd rather answer your question on the fly than have you wonder. But the oils that Velin was talking about, your S's, sunflower, safflower, soybean, those are 3 S's. If you see them on a label, go the other way. Just don't eat them. Your best is going to be olive oil if it's not cooked. That's great for salads and things like that because it has a low smoke point. You don't want it to burn. It's already heated in processing, so you don't want to heat it anymore. And then avocado oil is probably my favorite because it has a high smoke point. You can use it for cooking easily without any concerns. And if you're a coconut oil person, that's fine. MCT oil, which is medium chain triglycerides, is part of coconut oil, and that too has a high smoke point, so you can use it. And I'm like got lots of tips if you want them. Drink your water slowly, don't chug it.
Oh,
Just
now
slipping
that's
a
a
few
good
of
one.
them in there.
That's a good one. Yeah, because we talk about water and sleep, and of course, exercise. And a big one for me is just getting out in nature,
Mm.
and that might be sit in the backyard, on the step in the backyard and just look at the trees for a little bit, watch the grass grow. Um,
There is a certain energy that comes from being in nature. And I don't know if you know, but actually in Japan, it's covered by insurance. And now I think in California as well, there's something called forest bathing.
yes,
And that is a way, and they, in Japan, it's just the way of life. But it is covered by insurance, and it is taking people out in nature and having them experience that. And it does have very positive effects on your health.
yes, it does. Oh my gosh, Judy, like I said, I think we could talk for a few more hours.
Oh, I'm sure, maybe a few days at that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And maybe we will have an opportunity to bring another piece of this conversation to our audience. And I would so love to do that because I believe this is such valuable information. And so many of us need these tidbits. We've been doing our research, and there's so many places out there where so much information, you get inundated with it, and some of it is conflicting with other pieces, and it's kind of, where do I go for the right stuff? And I want to invite you to come here to the Health, Wisdom,
Absolutely.
and Wealth show, because one of the things that I want to do is be that catalyst to disrupt the norm. Yes, sugar can cause depression if you're doing sugar. And if you get off of sugar, you can get into depression. And, there's so many facets of this. And what I want people to really recognize is that it is a journey. And we're here to support you on your journey to being your best self, having these powerful conversations that will help you to understand some of the parts and pieces that you might encounter on your journey. And Judy, thank you so much for being here. Our audience is going to find your contact information below this video. And yes, reach out to Judy. I'm so grateful. She's an amazing resource for not only educating around this kind of information, but supporting people getting onto and through this journey. We've heard so many times that the important part of life is not the day that you were born or the day that you die, but the dash in between. And we've got so many opportunities during that dash because we never know when it's going to end. Start now. And please, if you enjoyed this episode of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show, comment below, share out to the world, find us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and join us next week for another really amazing show. Help us get the message out, and most of all, remember, live, love, and be a bigger positive impact maker in your world. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us, and bye for now.